There comes a point in every leader's career when the very definition of winning fundamentally changes. The focus begins to shift. It moves away from just personal achievement and towards a more lasting impact. And that critical transition is what we're going to analyze here. This quote really gets to the heart of it. It captures that core tension, the transition from raw ambition to a sense of stewardship. We're going to explore this shift, not through abstract theory, but through a case study that's grounded in direct, lived experience. So let's look at the author's mother, Nanay. For our purposes, we're not just looking at her as a sentimental figure. Instead, think of her as a case study in leadership evolution. It's a journey through some very distinct phases that I think reveal some truly universal principles. As you can see, her leadership trajectory moves from a focus on sheer survival to a focus on stewardship. Let's just briefly walk through the phases of this pretty remarkable transformation. Okay, so the first stage is just pure grit. To fund her own education, she worked as a domestic helper. She'd often go to class with her hands still sticky from peeling potatoes for her cousin's food stall. Graduating with only 2 uniforms and a single pair of shoes, well, that wasn't just an achievement. It was really an act of defiance against systemic poverty. After her husband's death, her leadership role intensified dramatically. She became the sole provider for 5 children. The author recalls how her mother would often claim she wasn't hungry, only to eat whatever was left after her children were finished. And this illustrates a type of leadership that isn't defined by grand gestures, but by consistent, quiet, daily sacrifice. And this is where we see a pivotal shift in her mindset. Even while she was borrowing money for her own children's daily needs, she was also donating monthly to support a seminarian's education. So for her, giving wasn't something that depended on having a surplus. It actually became a core operating principle. Her actions really started to reveal a new definition of what wealth meant to her. When her own children would provide her with money, she'd actually redistribute it to other mothers in the neighborhood. Her sense of purpose had clearly expanded beyond her immediate family to the broader community. So, what does this trajectory actually mean for us as leaders? Let's move from the narrative to the analysis. This life story reveals some clear, transferable principles for anyone looking to build lasting impact. We can really distill her journey into 3 core realizations. Now, these aren't abstract theories from a textbook. They are earned truths, forged through decades of real-world experience. Let's take a look at each one. First, leadership evolves into stewardship. We saw her begin as the fighter, completely focused on her own survival and her own education. But over time, her focus gradually shifted outward, first to her children and then to her neighbors. The objective was no longer about securing her own position, but about cultivating success in others. The second realization is that the metric for success completely changes. When she was asked about her happiest moment, even while literally standing in front of luxury shops in Paris, she didn't mention travel or any material possessions. She said it was her retirement party, being surrounded by the family, the students, and the community she had served. Her victory was measured in people, not in things. And finally, sacrifice creates a generational ripple effect. By fighting for her own education, she broke a cycle of poverty. That single act of sacrifice didn't just change her own life, it completely altered the trajectory of her children and, through her generosity, the lives of other families she helped educate. That's how a real legacy is built. This whole journey perfectly illustrates the final stage of a specific strategic framework for leadership evolution. Within the pawn to queen model, this is what's called the queen stage. It's that phase where leadership is defined by consciously directing your influence toward the growth of others and creating something that will absolutely outlast you. Her life serves as a very clear, powerful example of this principle in action. This entire case study ultimately turns the lens right back on us. It moves from observing her journey to examining our own. And that leads to a final, and I think, confronting question for every single leader. Are you simply accumulating achievements, or are you consciously designing the impact you'll leave behind? What will be the final measure of your win when the game is over? That's a question worth pausing on.